Take a slow breath in. And gently let it out. You're safe now. This is your time to rest, to drift, to let the world soften. With each breath, feel your shoulders grow heavy. Your eyelids warmer, your mind a little quieter. Let the day melt behind you, like candle wax at dusk. You've arrived at a different time. A different place. And a gentler pace. A time of parchment and potion, candlelight and cobbled lanes. The hush of old pages, the glint of brass scales. And the soft murmur of something ancient moving quietly through the walls of time. Let yourself settle deeper. Because our story begins in a small stone cellar, hidden beneath a crooked-roofed cottage at the edge of the village of Eldwythe. This place is older than memory. Built into the hill long before the ivy crept down its walls or the moss claimed the mortar. Here, in this peaceful little hollow, lives an alchemist. He is not the kind from tales of gold and greed. No. He seeks not wealth, nor grandeur. He is a quiet man. A gentle scholar. A patient soul. He searches for calm. His name is Thalen, and he writes with a feather quill plucked not from just any bird, but from a starling that once nested in the beams of the old monastery tower. A feather gifted to him by a wandering monk who spoke of its heavenly touch. In the medieval mind, feathers were thought to carry echoes of the skies. The prayers of monks, the music of angels, even the secrets of the wind. It was believed certain birds, like the raven or the dove, held knowledge too delicate for human ears. Thalen believes that too. And so, each evening, long after the market stalls have closed, and the shutters have drawn tight, he lights his small fire, dips his quill in ink, and listens. Imagine now, the cellar where Thalen works. Stone walls, round and aged, lined with books whose spines bear faded gold script. Bundles of dried herbs, lavender, sage, and thyme hang from ceiling beams, brushing the tops of dusty glass bottles. There's a hearth in the far wall. The fire inside crackles low, casting flickers across copper pots and coiled brass tubes. There's a bubbling sound, slow and soothing, as two liquids blend together in a round-bottomed flask, turning from indigo to a calming green. A narrow arched window lets in a sliver of moonlight. And the room glows gently, amber from the fire, silver from the moon. You can almost feel the warmth against your skin. The scent of crushed herbs in the air. And the gentle weight of sleepiness starting to curl at the edge of your mind. Thalen moves slowly, purposefully. His robes make the softest brushing sounds, like parchment on parchment. He breathes through his nose, slowly in, slowly out. He is calm. And soon, you will be too. Tonight, Thalen is working on something delicate. A formula not for gold, but for gentleness. A tincture that quiets the storms of the mind. He believes that if one writes down their thoughts with the right feather, one that's carried wind, seen moonlight, heard the hush of ancient cathedrals, then the ink itself takes on a kind of peace. And so, he dips the starling feather into his ink, made from crushed violets and soot from a sacred candle. The ink flows smooth and dark. And with every stroke of the feather across parchment, a soft sh sound echoes in the quiet room. He writes not words, but symbols. Patterns whispered in dreams. Signs he learned from an old manuscript bound in deerskin and held shut with rosewood buttons. Each curve of the symbol hums faintly in the air. A hum too soft to hear, but felt like the distant ringing of a bell through water. Outside, a breeze stirs the ivy. It brushes against the wooden door, whispering secrets from the forest beyond. The sound is soft as a lullaby. Just as the ink begins to dry, a gentle tapping comes at the door above. Not a knock, more like the timid rhythm of a child's foot on a wooden stair. Thalen looks up. He smiles. He knows who it is. It's Lyra, the miller's daughter. She comes once a month with a question from her dreams. Some nights she asks why the moon flickers like a candle. Other nights, she wonders what the stars are sewing together with their light. Thalen never turns her away. He believes questions asked at night are closest to the truth. So he opens the cellar door, and Lyra steps down slowly. Barefoot, holding her slippers in her hand so they don't squeak on the stone. She sits on the stool by the hearth, legs curled under her. As the alchemist returns to his work. Tonight, she does not speak. She only watches, eyes wide. As the feather moves across the page. And the symbols seem to glow, just slightly, in the firelight. Thalen says nothing either. He knows that some answers come not in words, but in the quiet between them. And this night, silence is the softest song. The alchemist's feather makes another soft stroke across the vellum. Its tip glides like a whisper, leaving behind a curling glyph shaped like a rising moon. Each symbol is part of the formula. But more than that, each is a kind of quiet invitation. A map to peace, drawn not for the eyes, but for the spirit. Thalen leans back slightly, listening. Not for sound, but for resonance. The air hums when a symbol is just right. Like a tuning fork struck in the quiet of a chapel. And tonight, the air is singing. Lyra watches, her breath slow and shallow. She doesn't understand the symbols, but she feels them. And that's enough. The starling feather, worn at the tip from many nights of writing, still carries the faint sheen of twilight. In medieval times, starlings were seen as messengers of celestial order. Birds who flew in great swirling clouds called murmurations. Each movement guided not by leader, but by instinct. It was said their feathers captured the music of the spheres. A harmony so pure it could calm storms or quiet the troubled heart. Thalen had heard the story from a barefoot nun once. One who traded feathers for ink, and knew lullabies that made even owls drowsy. And so, when the feather moves, it's not just ink that flows. It is memory. It is lullaby. It is stillness. Thalen sets down his quill. He walks, slowly, toward a glass vessel filled with blue liquid. It sits above a gentle flame. And beneath it, a curled sprig of valerian root simmers in a copper spoon. Valerian, the root of dreams. In the 12th century, healers would crush it into wine for nights too haunted to sleep. Others burned it beneath windows, to keep night spirits from wandering in. Thalen stirs it gently with a rod carved from yew. Tiny bubbles rise and pop. Each one releasing a curl of soft steam that smells like earth after rain. He pours a drop into a small vial, then another. Each vial is wrapped in parchment and bound with thread. Each carries the symbol he wrote, each one unique, like a snowflake etched in ink. He hands one to Lyra without speaking. She nods. Closes her eyes. And holds it close to her chest like a lullaby in a bottle. The fire grows lower. The room dims. The last of the bubbling slows into silence. Above, the cellar's ceiling curves into a low dome of stone. But Thalen has painted the stones with tiny flecks of silver and blue. A replica of the constellations he once studied through a cracked telescope in the monastery archives. The medieval mind was fascinated by stars. They mapped dreams into constellations. Read fortunes in the position of Venus. And told time by the brightness of Polaris. Tonight, Thalen traces one of the constellations with his finger in the air. Lyra, the harp, for the girl beside him. She smiles sleepily. It is time to go. Thalen rises, and Lyra follows. They climb the spiral steps slowly. The candle he carries flickering shadows along the stone. The cellar door opens with a soft creak. And cool night air washes over them like a sigh. Outside, the grass is wet with dew. The moon is high, and the trees lean inward as if listening. Lyra looks up at the stars and says, "They feel closer tonight." And Thalen answers, "That's because we remembered to be still." She tucks the vial into her pocket and pads barefoot down the lane. The hush of her steps lost in the sounds of the sleeping village. The alchemist stands at the doorway for a long time, watching her disappear into the mist. Then he turns, and descends once more. Because the night is not yet done whispering. Back in the cellar, the fire is now nothing more than glowing embers. They pulse red and gold, casting a soft warmth that seems to throb with breath. Thalen places the feather quill gently on its carved stand. He runs a finger down the shaft, and it shivers, as if remembering wind. There's something about feathers. How they hold both the sky and silence in them. How, even now, they seem light enough to drift in dreams. He lights a final candle and places it on the windowsill. In medieval villages, one candle in a high window was often a sign. A beacon for weary travelers, or a prayer for protection. Tonight, it is both. Thalen sits once more in his chair, eyes soft, watching the way the flame sways in rhythm with the breath of night. And he begins to write again. Not for answers this time, but simply for the joy of the motion. The rhythm. The hush of feather on parchment. The feeling of time loosening. Of the world growing quiet around him. Thalen's quill moves again. But now, his writing is slower, less structured. Not formulas. Not spells. Just thoughts. Dreams. Drifting like leaves on a quiet stream. In the margins of his parchment, he sketches tiny feathers. Crescent moons. Sleeping foxes curled into themselves. All things that carry the hush of night within them. There was an old monastic belief that angels could read the margins of texts. Not the center, not the bold script, but the faint musings along the edge. They believed the divine spoke not in shouts, but in soft forgotten corners. So Thalen leaves space in his writing. Room for breath, for wonder. For whatever small voice might wish to speak. And in that stillness, the cellar seems to sigh with him. He turns now to the shelf of dried feathers. Neatly labeled, softly fanned. There's a raven feather, thick and wise. A swan's, as pale as milk. A nightjar's, deep brown and gold, gathered from a nest near the orchard. Each feather once belonged to a bird that watched the stars. In medieval bestiaries, birds were more than creatures. They were symbols. Messengers. Keepers of secrets that flew too high for the earthbound to hear. He selects a dove feather tonight, gentle, round, whisper-light. The kind of feather used in blessings. Or tucked into books to protect dreams from fraying. He balances it on his hand. It does not move. Stillness like this is rare. He lets it rest there a moment longer before returning it to its velvet-lined case. There, behind a jar of pressed lavender, he notices something. A vial. Long forgotten. It is dust-covered, the glass fogged slightly. But the symbol drawn on it is unmistakable. A circle, with a feather floating through the center. His own mark. But from years ago. He uncorks it. A faint scent escapes, rosewater, sage, and a trace of something smoky. Ah, he remembers now. It was his first attempt at the elixir of stillness. Too strong, he recalls. Too deep. He gazes into the glass as if it might answer a question he hasn't yet asked. Then he sets it aside. Not every question needs to be solved tonight. The alchemist moves toward the small side door. The one that opens into the garden. He lights the iron lantern, its handle warm in his hand. And steps quietly outside. The garden is cloaked in mist. Each plant glistens. Moonlight catches on dew like silver spun over every leaf. He walks the winding path, each step slow and deliberate. Medieval monks believed walking slowly through herb gardens at night, barefoot. Could draw dreams up from the earth into the body. A ritual they called dream rooting. Thalen pauses before a patch of lemon balm. He bends low, brushing the leaves gently. They release a sweet, sleepy scent that floats on the breeze. The feather, tucked now into his robe's pocket, seems to warm slightly. As if it, too, is remembering something. Inside, the clock tower chimes twice. The second bell always echoes longer. It's the hour between. Neither truly night nor yet morning. A sacred time in many medieval texts. Some called it the blue hour. Others the hushed watch. A time when veils thin, and peace walks more freely among the living. Thalen returns to his desk. The candle has burned low. The feather rests beside the parchment like a tired traveler. He takes a final breath. And writes 3 words. Peace is earned. He does not sleep in a grand bed, but on a low cot built into the book-lined wall. The mattress is stuffed with wool and chamomile. And his pillow is wrapped in soft linen once soaked in rosewater and dried in sunlight. He slips beneath the blanket. The fire is down to cinders now, but the room is warm. Above him, shelves filled with scrolls and journals. Centuries of thoughts stacked like quiet sentinels. Some are his. Some came before. Some wait to be written. He closes his eyes. The feather rests on the table nearby. And as the world grows quieter, you may begin to feel it too. The way your breath softens. Your limbs grow heavy. Your thoughts untangle into strands of moonlight and mist. The alchemist's cellar is still. And so are you. The small round window above Thalen's bed is crusted at the edges with frost. He left it cracked open, just slightly, so that a sliver of night air could curl into the room. Like a cat searching for a quiet place to sleep. Above, the stars glimmer. But not as we see them now. No. These are medieval stars. Twinkling in unfamiliar constellations. Mapped by monks in hilltop abbeys. Who believed the heavens rode in symbols. One such constellation, a feathered quill chasing a crescent moon, was known as Somni Scriba. The dream scribe. It was said that if you slept beneath this sign, you would wake with answers to questions you never thought to ask. Tonight, Somni Scriba rests directly above Thalen's cellar. The room is still. Utterly still. Except, the feather stirs. Not from breeze. But from something older. A hush of energy barely there. As though the air itself remembers. The feather lifts, softly, just a tremble. And then settles again. Pointing slightly toward the journal. It's not magic, not exactly. Just attention. Intention. As medieval alchemists believed. Where the feather falls, there lies the truth unspoken. Perhaps it's nothing. Or perhaps the feather is reminding Thalen what truths he carries in sleep. From the hearth, a soft pulse. A coal glows, then flickers green. Green fire. The rarest kind. In medieval labs, it signified harmony. A perfect mix of elements. Copper, pine resin, and a pinch of salt from a spring tide. Thalen had not added these recently. Yet the fire breathes green. A quiet signal from the balance he had unknowingly struck. The flame does not roar. It hums. Low. Comforting. Like the purr of an old cat curled at your feet. The cellar seems to lean into that sound. And maybe you do, too. In another time, Thalen had been a musician. A traveling bard, strumming lullabies in moonlit courtyards. But his lute now sits on the topmost shelf. Strings long since loosened. Yet tonight, as mist curls along the window's edge, a single string sounds. Soft. Barely more than breath. The note is familiar. The old lullaby of the alchemists. A tune passed from teacher to student. When silence became the lesson. One note becomes two. Two become four. Not from fingers, but from memory itself, echoing. A lullaby without words. Just the whisper of vibration. You feel it in your ribs. Low and slow. Like your heart has begun to hum along. On the corner shelf sits a bowl. Carved from soapstone. Filled with pale gray salt. Salt, in the medieval world, was more than food. It was sacred. A barrier. A blessing. A preservative of time and thought. Thalen, though mostly asleep now, had earlier drawn a small ring of salt near his bedside. A quiet ritual. Let no dream cross this threshold that does not serve rest. He had whispered. You may imagine it now. Drawing a soft line in your own mind. A circle where worry cannot pass. Where to-do lists, names, and numbers all dissolve before reaching the center. Only softness remains inside. Like snow untouched. Like still water before dawn. Just before sleep fully takes him, Thalen had melted a small disk of wax. He pressed it with an old seal. A feather wrapped around an hourglass. This was a tradition of his master. Carve a single word into wax each night before bed. Not to change the world. Just to name what you seek in dreams. Tonight, Thalen wrote, ease. A simple word. But in it, the softness of breath. The surrender of weight. The drifting of petals down a lazy stream. The wax rests on his bedside table. Still warm. Still fragrant with lavender and sage. You may imagine your own word now. What would your wax seal say? No need to answer. Just feel it forming in your chest. Not spoken, but known. The night deepens. All around the cellar, the world slows. Even the insects outside have grown silent. There's a medieval belief that dreams ride down streams. Each thought like a tiny boat. Nudged forward by sleep. When the stream slows, you know the dream is ready to dock. Thalen's breath is slow now. Even. Like waves on a moonlit shore. He has docked. You may be floating there too. Your boat just beginning to settle against the edge. Ropes undone. Oars resting. No effort. Only arrival. From a beam above the alchemist's cot. A lantern swings slightly. Its oil is almost spent. But the glass catches what light remains. Casting long, drowsy shadows. Across the stonework walls. Inside the lantern glass. Pressed like a secret between pages. Is a tiny sprig of yarrow. Yarrow, long believed in medieval lore. To mend not only wounds, but restless hearts. Knights carried it before battle. Midwives burned it to bless the air. Thalen simply keeps it near, believing it eases the boundary between waking and sleep. Tonight, it glows softly. Not with fire, but with memory. The feather, light and patient, still rests beside the open journal. Ink has dried on the last written line. But something lingers in the air. A vibration, almost. As if thoughts left unwritten continue their path quietly in the room. The medieval alchemists believed that a thought held in silence still carried weight in the world. That unwritten dreams could nest in the corners of one's dwelling, waiting until they found the right breath to ride. Maybe tonight, some of your own thoughts have begun to settle. Like dandelion fluff, seeking a place to root. No need to chase them. They know where to land. Far beyond the village. Past fields and cloisters and frost-covered paths. A chapel bell rings. Not loudly. Faintly. Like a memory heard underwater. Thalen doesn't stir. But the sound touches something in the room. The medieval world believed that the space between bell chimes was sacred. A veil parting briefly between time and timelessness. So let this moment, this space, be your veil. Let the in-between hold you gently. Not pulling. Not pushing. Just rocking you softly. On the edges of sound. On the workbench, feathers begin to drift. Not from breeze, but from stillness. As if the very hush in the room has stirred them gently into motion. A raven feather glides across the desk. An owl's downy plume turns in the air. And the dove feather, the softest of all, circles once. Then lands beside you. In your imagination. Medieval healers believed that if you dreamt of feathers, your spirit was lightning. That you were ready to rise. Not in flight, but in peace. Tonight, you've gathered feathers. Without moving. Let them rest now. Thalen sleeps. Completely now. One hand resting on his parchment. The other near the warm stone wall. His dreams are slow. Wide. Unhurried. He sees fields he has never walked. Letters he has not yet written. Faces that smile but need no names. In his dream, the feather writes on its own. No ink. No lines. Just the endless scroll of sky. Outside, the night deepens. The stars lean closer. Not to shine, but to watch over. You are welcome here, too. As the listener. As the dreamer. As the one who drifts now. Gently. Without effort. So, close your eyes now, if you haven't already. Let your breathing slow. In. And out. Feel your chest rise like a lullaby. And fall like the final word on an old scroll. Let the room around you melt away. Until all that remains is the warmth of the hearth. The flicker of the green flame. And the rustle of a single, ancient feather. You are safe here. Softly held. Nothing is needed. Nothing to do. Only this. Only this moment. This calm. This quiet. And as the fire fades to embers. And the lantern dims. You sleep. You sleep. You sleep.